everyone, and welcome to Word World. Um, I want to thank David Marini and our first years and our incredible alumni, faculty, and current students who come out tonight. This is going to be a slightly different introduction that I've been doing for Word Worlds. And I'll begin with one of my favorite sites on this campus. Over the years, one of my favorite campus sightings is of a mentored study session. It's of an MFA writing professor and student sitting hunched over a manuscript, reading together, considering and debating over a novel chapter, a poem, a sentence, or even a word. And these sightings often feel private and intimate, so I look away, even though I'm glad to have seen them, to know they are happening every day on our campuses. These mentored study sessions in A2, in the Writer Studio Garden, in the Formis Access Cafe, or even on our Oakland campus, illustrate the collegiality forged between our teachers and students. It is what makes our program unique, the close attention and respect we pay to one another's writing. After our students graduate, these close readings do not end. You hopefully continue them with each other, and occasionally with faculty members who go from being your teachers to your friends, colleagues, and fellow writers. Anne Marino is such a faculty member who demands only the best from her students. She has a stubborn insistence that our students' manuscripts should be as sharp, as clear, and as brave as any published work. She believes our writers can meet her impressively high standards, and our very best students have risen to her challenge. As many of you already know, Anne is currently in hospice after being diagnosed with pancreatic cancer last October. For those of us who had a chance to work with her, we are blessed. And for those who haven't, you should read her brilliant novel, The Collapsible World, and you will understand why her fierce, unflinching vision is such an attraction to so many of our students. With The Collapsible World, it will never be too late to learn from Anne. Tonight, she is surrounded by her closest family and friends, preparing, in her boyfriend Andy's words, for her escape. She has been an integral, unique, irreplaceable force in the MFA writing program, and I hope we can continue to honor her high standards, her determination to push boundaries by exploring characters and storylines often relegated to the margins, and her dedication to the craft of writing. So tonight, this Word World is dedicated to you, Anne, and I hope you can feel the love, affection, and admiration we are sending to you now. So with that, we are going to start with our first. Here we go. So I have the pleasure of introducing our first reader, Shandy Walton is a writer from New Jersey and an MFA candidate at California College of the Arts and Crafts. In her spare time, she enjoys listening mostly to Nina Simone, reading Grendel excerpts to her fiancé, and trying to figure out new ways and recipes for getting back to the East Coast. She also avidly bakes and shares the birth date 1027 with Sylvia Plath and President Theodore Roosevelt. Shandy Walton.
I still believe in the crafts, so I do say California College of the Arts and Crafts. First of all, I would just like to say thank you so much for coming out to the reading, and I'm really honored to be here tonight and to be around my colleagues and cohorts and friends. My thesis is titled Public Virtue, and it's really an exploration of popular culture through mythology and things that are related to anthropology and the body. So I'm going to read my epigraph, and then I'm going to move steadily into some excerpts. This is my epigraph. Well then, what is the stars? What is the insides of the stars? And what lies beyond depths of space, beyond the bright girdle of the Milky Way? A slight misquotation of Mr. O'Casey, of who I don't have any conception. This is a poem that alludes to mythology. Adequate wiring. Dogs might, instead of fleas, have crabs, a deuce of ticks, roughs, and deep sugar, restless eyeballing. Zeus socks some melted sun butter brown dame, dressed in bed chinch and big as a cow, he rapes. This next poem is a poem that is loosely based on the story Miss Lonely Hearts by Nathaniel West. And Miss Lonely Hearts has a narrator who is taking on the role of a sort of Dear Abby persona and speaking to people. And I've decided to write to Miss Lonely Hearts. In my shower, rumination on Nathaniel West. The water rushes, who controls it? Even the eye of the faucet can't say. Dear Miss Lonely Hearts, I weigh too much, can't get a boy or river next to me. How can one bend others to her will? I'm cold, but know another word. I'm scared to say it. Shiver. Someone said a man can wash ashore like a fish. I want a bird. Do you think after I clean myself well, I can have one? Mermaid. Are you nice, Miss Hearts? Is it temperate where you come from? Does the sun fade? Have you ever contemplated a swim in jeans around the Atlantic edge? I imagine my tubs ajar. When you are sad, portly, or dirty, do you become all of them at once? Far away, I hear my mother cawing. She dies in the Indo. So does my father, on a covered lemonade tugboat with cypress blossoms painted onto the sternum. Do you like my story at all? Pen me. And this follows it, and it's a tribute to Porgy and Bess, and often there are songs that refer to Dr. Jesus. I thought that was funny. While listening to Porgy and Bess, when in a boat or on a window, do you desire to play and sing, pull pigeons from your wake for Dr. Jesus? Isn't it far easier to lie near the corner of a pane where even dark curtains can't cut the day in two? To be awash, alone, is maybe a little more than blues, or the soul's collapse somehow evens the score. This is a little more jazzy. Right. Wet eyes, mouth zero. It used to be a sonnet. It can't be anymore. Wet eyes, mouth zero. The hero is hung, speaks bray, talks easy while body glides pornography, body wins witnesses, the music's hot, still wet instance, riled up. Sucker for hooker, big legs, and better Bessies, damnation. Done ringing the jazz, done wrung it out the music, done wrong. Fawns over Charlie, appropriate weather to get back to the bar. Bird, bench, alley, red occasion. Hooker mongers hummed up, swallowed mythology, dawn sound. Okay, this poem includes Gautama, and this Gautama is a figure known in Siddharthic text as either the monk or, if spelled Gautama, the Buddha. Many days and dust and irony, Gautama. Last night I drank too much, I always do. Parch, I'm mad, parched through, go away. A goat is on a rock right now, I nod for grass. Shadow salt licks that distant bind of dirt, past prison, glass liquid jar. Zion cry, ask tidy, who stays? This is a sanctuary, blank paps, cool back, whale and rum, Gautama. I want a warm thing, I want a sob, a car, a philosophy. Forgot a man, bring a show of fish, books about trout, that vision tan, brown again. A good sum of naturals dig up parts in this spot. Cows fallow, sick of ground snow. I'm probably not around. Arm and hand climb cans, sewn bits unsewn. At 2 a.m. a crisis struck. Mayans, right? It's Christmas in Ohio. Corn grows. In my blood, a brown canyon of ash cuts. Sabbath won't do. I work in the ash cuts. Nearby the goose house, I cracked open the almond and the sun's mother. I too will make me a man with worn out shoes, take the hazelnut and leave the golden spindle with its reel. 1 almond kilogram, sugar, groats. Won't you let me sleep with the geese? And I'm heading towards my end soon, so this is the aspect of my manuscript that deals most strictly with men. Portrait of a young man. You may dream a dog or hemming men up, but the truth is you are a boy, leaf, and moon. Even after a yellow crane, the wheels spin. It rains. Reflect, stay pinch, speak politics. You will eat and sow grasses, reap, forage from our objects above trunk and store. You repeat the green objects there in the size of your breeches, the way you walk. You chip your teeth at radio's end, a bottom space. Gnash out of these teeth a permission to fork and shovel, a persimmon, a persistence, a provision. You are so weary, tired of this dog's body, hunched near a rock in a primitive gesture. Neptune, 1846. Sorry, this is when Neptune was discovered by some European guy whose name I can't remember. Neptune, 1846. Green young crops and sober snowfields, as seen through the blue filter, the moon is a satellite for the contemporary astronomer. I sat in a tub, and the baby came rushing out in a show of dusky red. The baby, I imagine, must live on a meager salary and has a cosmology of felled trees. Similar to the house-sized rock that hit Siberia in 1908, still reflects sunlit bombardment. The eye, solid hydrogen, a wanting to call mother for judgmental asking. The metaphysical once said, forget the body, emotional deference is necessary. Tissue accompanies red string and water. The eye, helium. David watched the pock-faced male for 7 days, a little dyed god in his sackcloth bedchamber, give up. While spring motions forward, I feel each white of the changing climate. The sun, as seen through blue filter, yellows the crops. In the tub, my body a matchbox galaxy, the eye density. One afternoon, small and by small body, I called my baby to give it sex, a spectacular work, location, it meadows still with complicated detail. And lastly, is topography. And this is the poem that ends my thesis. And it was the most exciting poem to write because it ended my thesis. But I was told my thesis is still too short. Topography. In that barrel is an atoll, and on the atoll grows a paper birch. Beneath the birch is a yellow coffer, and in the coffer a puckered cradle, and in the cradle is a gelding, and in the gelding a leaf bird, and in the leaf bird is an egg. Whoever finds the egg and breaks it open kills me at the same time. Okay? I am going to be introducing Kat A. Croswell. She is one of the most, and this is not her introduction. I just have to say, she is one of the most inspiring women, one of the strongest women that has encouraged me through some of the best and hardest times here at CCA. And I'm honored to read her intro by her friend Jody Tharon. And this is a very true introduction. Some people write with an axe, grinding, grinding, grinding. They wear the reader down, using metaphors to intrigue. Kat is not one of these writers. She's a writer of precision with keen skills of observation, and she lives the way she writes. No axes, all skills. I wonder when you look at me who you see. Who are my people? Kat knew, Kat knows. When I met her, she saw to the blood in my bones. This is what makes her words matter to me. Everyone has a story. Not everyone tells with integrity and perception. I'm a 24/7 single mother of two amazing young people. When Kat met me, she met them too. She understands family. I carry a lot alone. Kat knows. She knows. I got sick. Many people, including a number of writers I know, said, "Get well." Think about the phrase. It's a command. Get well. Kat said, "What do you need?" I cried. At first I wasn't able to answer her. Silence. Kat knows there's room for silence in writing, as in life. Kat has done much, received recognition, has a list of accomplishments you can read for yourself, but hear me in this moment. Kat listens. I answered, "I'm hungry." Such simple words. Kat brought me soup. Her beloved partner Kira made it. Good soup. Kat delivered the soup to me, knowing I had to be the one to eat it. Read her words, people, and you will be nourished, seen, heard.
Damn it, now I really have to live up to this shit. Oh, gosh. Thank you, Shandy. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. We really, really, really appreciate your support. The first thing I want to do is put some thank yous out there. First to my partner, Kira, and all of our families, near, far, and very far. Leah, hi. Your unwavering support, it has meant the world to me, all of you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jody. All of my professors and instructors and mentors, in no particular order, here we go: Anne, Tom, Opal, Anita, Claire, Shanti, Caroline, Matt, Shears, Gloria, and Hugh. Thank you so much. Special thanks to my thesis committee, Tom and Shanti. Your direction, guidance, and advice is good. Also, special thank you to David Marini. David, thank you so much for all of your guidance, your listening, and your support. Thank you, Stephen. Stephen's going to be accompanying me in reading tonight, and he is an awesome brother. I love him so much. Thank you for your time, Stephen, and your voice and your support. So, the name of the title, right now anyway, of my thesis is Pieces of 8. It is a coming-of-age piece that takes place on the south side of Chicago in the late 1960s through mid-70s. Yay, Chi-Town. The chapter's protagonists are Jasmine Piccolo Harper and her neighbor/love interest, Buster Michael Boudreaux. In a nutshell, and for the purposes of this reading tonight, we are skipping through Jasmine's life and beginning where she is 12, almost 13 years old. She has discovered the new boy at school, 13-year-old Buster Boudreaux. Buster also lives a block away in Jasmine's neighborhood. So here we go. The name of this chapter is called The Promise. Hey, you. Yeah, I'm talking to you, sweet thing. How you get to be so fine like cherry wine? This is how Jasmine Jazzy Piccolo Harper started her day. Every day, singing these words in whispered tones back to her 12-year-old reflection in exaggerated fashion, staring back into her own copper-colored eyes. Jazzy's greatest wish was to be walked home by the mysterious older boy with a weird last name, Buster Boudreaux, an 8th grader, who had moved into the neighborhood over the summer. His was the middle, brown shingled house on the next block. It wasn't just Buster's stocky build, his brown eggshell-colored skin, his cool confidence, or the slight dip in his walk. Nor was it his bowl-shaped afro with a part on the side, or even his hazel eyes that enchanted Jasmine, although none of these attributes was lost on her. It was a feature that Jasmine, in her 12 years, had never seen or thought possible for a black person to possess: freckles. Buster Boudreaux's freckles were sprinkled across his cheekbones, the bridge of his nose, and danced between the spaces of his eyes. When Jasmine saw him talking to another kid at school, sometimes she'd catch him stealing a glimpse of her walking to class. While she couldn't help but smile, she'd duck her face into her locker, take a deep breath, and whisper to herself, "Be cool, girl." During the third week of school, after she got up enough gumption, she'd asked her best friend Victoria, aka Beans, to ask Tommy Too Tall to find out whether Buster was interested in her. After Beans cornered Tommy Too Tall in the hall, barely giving him enough room to squeeze his 12-and-a-half-year-old, 5'7", 220-pound frame out of the boys' bathroom, she pretended to flirt with him, just long enough to get him to spill what he knew of Buster's interest in Jazzy. "What? How am I supposed to know?" Tommy Too Tall countered, miffed that Bean's soft, purring voice really wasn't meant as a way for him to finally get her phone number. Tommy said, "That dude just started going here. I ain't seen him talking to her." "What? Why? What you want to know for, Victoria?" He punctuated every syllable of her name and moved his face in closer to hers with each one. "Is this really about Jazzy? You interested or something? You too young anyway." Bean saw him hesitate. "Well, what?" she asked suspiciously. Tommy Too Tall placed his hand on his cheek and chin as if posing for a photo. "Well..." Bean smacked him upside the head. "Ouch! Tell me," she demanded. Dude may have mentioned that he wanted to rap to jazz, but you know. "See? That's why you get on my nerves, Tommy Taylor. You always think you know something. Well, you don't know nothing." Beans let the words simmer on her lips, while she rolled her neck and pinched Tommy's bicep hard. She walked off in a huff, while Tommy Too Tall winced and rubbed his arm. He smiled just a little because his chances of getting Beans' number was, as far as he was concerned, still possible. For her part, Beans was simply happy that she got what she needed for Jazzy. Armed with the most important question answered, after the last school bell, Jazzy imagined that she, with Beans at her side, would walk up to Buster and have Beans introduce them. And of course, as if on command, Buster would be so captivated by her beauty that he would volunteer to walk her home and carry her backpack. Well, not really. Stephen?
One night, when taking out the garbage, Jasmine Piccolo Harper stood in front of me like Venus, the brightest planet in the Earth's night sky. The single working streetlight whose bulb had been flickering for a few weeks, as if it had something to say but kept chickening out, stood along the line of several others, whose bulbs had died. I swear, when Jasmine appeared from around the corner of my house, the flashing just stopped, and the one light aimed itself only on her, like her presence made it happy. She had a soft face, like the dew at dawn that rests on blades of grass. I remember thinking how perfectly shaped her slightly enormous afro looked, even as the skies began to cover us in a blanket of night. Her earthy, rich toned skin soothed the waves of chill bumps covering my own. It was in the moment that she reached out, her hand touching mine, that I looked into eyes shaped like the shells of circus peanuts. They were like caramel, smooth and sparkling all at once. Her lips spread like a gentle sculpture as she met my stare with a smile. In the dark, smelly alley, with the threat of being bitten by a family of beady-eyed gophers headed our way, I could only react by pulling her toward me, swinging the back door open and pushing her inside my house. My mother didn't exactly scream, but she did let out a yelp as a knife she had used to cut up the chicken slipped out of her hand and landed at my feet. I heard my little brother Hammer's stubby feet stomping from the living room to the kitchen. I had 6 pairs of eyes staring in my direction. "Oh, hey, Jazzy," Hammer squealed, running with arms open toward her.
Hey, little man.
In the meantime, Mom and me exchanged looks. I heaved my shoulders up and down, not knowing how my little brother knew this peculiar girl. Mom rinsed off her hands, dried them on the bottom of her apron, and extended her hand to Jasmine.
Oh, hello. I'm Mrs. Boudreau. These knuckleheads' mother.
"Mom," I whined. She ignored my embarrassment.
And who are you, you pretty little thing? Where'd you come from?
Mom's expression changed with a sudden recognition.
Hey, don't you live up the street in that red brick house? Hi, Mrs. Boudreau. My name's Jasmine Piccolo Harper. It's nice to meet you. And yes, ma'am, that's where I live with my mama and brothers.
I watched Mom grip Jasmine's hand and lead her to our dining room table. I just stood where I'd been standing and watched Mama sit with Jasmine, Hammer following them like a lost puppy, staring at Jasmine the whole time, tripping over his own platypus-looking feet.
Ooh, you okay, Hammer?
My little brother smiled in a pretend, bashful kind of way, allowing Jasmine to help steady him. Hammerstein was all googly-eyed, the little twerp.
Jasmine, your mama know where you are? It's after dark. Yes, ma'am. I asked her if I could come over just to say hello since Buster and me go to the same school, even though he's a grade older than me. You hear that, Buster? You see what I mean about all you're missing when all you do is go to school, keep your nose in those spy books of yours, and don't bother to make any friends?
I locked eyes with my mother. They're not spy books, Mother. They're science fiction.
Well, excuse me, Mr. Boudreau. You hear that, Jasmine? He only calls me Mother when I've said something to get his goat. Excuse me, ma'am?
My mother laughed and rose from her chair to finish preparing dinner. Jasmine Harper turned to me and smiled. That's when I noticed her ocean's deep dimples, so deep I wanted to curl myself into them. Instead, I looked down at the floor, wanting my mother to stop talking. Wanting Hammer to go back in the living room where he had been watching another rerun of Gilligan's Island, I wanted to just sit with her and not talk, and I wanted to sit and talk with her forever.
Mrs. Boudreau? Yes, honey. My mama wanted me to ask when we could invite you and your family over for Sunday dinner.
I watched my mother's hands stiffen. She bowed her head, closed her eyes, and stood silent. Water flowed from the faucet freely. The second hand on the rooster clock hung above the fridge, ticking as loudly as I thought my racing pulse was. And Hammer's stubby little hands drummed the table to a tune only he could hear. Mom turned the water off and kept her back to us.
Excuse me, will you, Jasmine?
It wasn't really a question. Mom simply wiped her hands on the dish towel. I watched Jasmine, who was starting to open her mouth to say something, watch my mom leave the kitchen. I had to stop myself from charging toward the sink while I cleared my throat and reached for a cup. "Would you like something to drink?" I asked without looking at her.
I'm sorry. Did I say something wrong?
"Nope, water?" I turned and faced her.
No, thank you. I think I should get home.
I felt my stomach drop. I begged my brain to give me something to say, delay her need to leave. How do you know my little brother?"
Oh, Hammer plays with my little brothers Jamar and Joseph all the time. One day they brought worms in the house and started pulling them apart so they could watch them come back together.
"Yeah, it's called regeneration," I said before I could stop myself. Jasmine pushed up her glasses.
Yeah. Well, it was nice to meet you, Buster Boudreau.
"Just Buster is fine."
Okay. Well, I guess I'll be seeing you around school, Buster.
She started for the back door. "Huh? Wait, let me walk you out." My mother reappeared as we walked through the living room. She touched Jasmine's arm.
It was good to meet you, Mrs. Boudreau. And you too, Jasmine. Please tell your mother hello for me here. Yes, ma'am. Buster, it's dark out now. You're gonna walk her home, right? No, it's okay, Mrs.
Let's go. I'll be right back, Mom. I opened the door and motioned for Jasmine to walk through. She smiled. I bit down hard on my bottom lip. I shut the door and walked next to Jasmine, careful not to walk too close, nervous that the bass beating thumping of my heart would scare her off. The first half block we walked, the crickets talked for us. The air was hot and stagnant. Jasmine walked with her hands folded in front of her, looking up toward the stars in the sky, at the trees, everything except me. With my hands buried in my pockets and my focus straight ahead, I kept trying to catch glimpses of her out of the corner of my eye.
Buster?
Yeah? Oh, sorry, didn't mean to yell. She giggled.
Is your mama okay?
She will be.
My mama just wanted to invite y'all for dinner, that's all. She always does it for new neighbors.
It's fine. Jasmine looked around while we walked looked around while we walked as if she were waiting for words to step up and meet us. Who do you have for homeroom? I asked, hoping to change the subject.
Miss Pettigrew?
I heard she's nice. We heard a siren blaring from a distance. Jasmine stopped walking. Her face turned sad. Pools of tears set on the bottom rim. Something wrong? Her eyebrows drew themselves in. She picked up her pace.
I hate that sound.
Does it scare you?
It always reminds me of my sister, JC.
Did something happen to her?
She died when I was 8.
I shut my eyes and felt my throat tighten. I'm sorry. How old was she?
13. Well, this is where I live. Thanks for walking me home, Buster.
You're welcome. We stood on the first step of Jasmine's front porch. The door to her house was open. The screen door stood closed, keeping the mosquitoes and flies away. Instead of facing each other, we stared out into the street. A leaf from one of the old oak trees detached itself from its vine, swooned down and landed softly on my shoulder. Jasmine reached toward me. I jerked away. The leaf slid off, landing delicately on a closed rose.
Hey, I was just gonna push it off. Jeez.
Warn me next time.
Are you always so...
She looked away from me. So what?
I don't know. Like you're mad or scared or something.
I wanted to take off, run back to my house, back to my room, and bury my head inside one of my books until dinner was ready. Jasmine started up the stairs, leaving me at the bottom. Maybe we can walk to school together sometime. The words unleashed themselves from my lips before I could rein them in. What if she had a boyfriend? What if she didn't even like me? What if Jasmine Piccolo Harper turned to me before she stepped inside?
How about Friday?
What?
This Friday. You want to pick me up so we can walk together?
Oh, sure, okay. The screen door squealed shut, her silhouette glowed with the stars.
You promise, Buster Boudreaux? Thank you. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Zane, Hawley. Zane Hawley would like no introduction. Here's Zane.
Hi. The title of this poem is Keep Going, Buddy. I once read somewhere, I think it was Cervantes' Don Quixote, that a lizard must execute 1,000,000 perfect push-ups in order to sleep with the lizard he loves. Thanks a lot. I guess that wasn't enough, sorry. I'd like to start off by giving some thank yous. Definitely to my family, my father, mother, and brother. They're sitting over there. Thank you, guys. I am who I am because of you. Weird and everything. Thank you to all the professors and teachers I've ever had in my life. Yeah, you've guided me to where I'm standing right now. And to all my friends and fellow students. And I guess most of all to my two professors on my thesis committee, the awesome Kevin Killian and the illustrious John Lasky. So I'm going to read a little scene from my thesis, which is titled Let Love In. It's a novella. And I'm going to read starting on page 72. And I guess what you need to know is the main character returned to this mysterious island where his best friend died mysteriously 2 years prior. And he meets a mysterious Russian girl. And yeah, they finally just got physical underneath the waterfall. And now they're under the waterfall. So that's what you need to know. Dion. I awake startled, head lifting sideways off Yana's smooth stomach, cold sweats creeping down my shoulder blades. I blink my eyes a few times, and the surrounding slowly comes into focus. We're lying on a beach of small black pebbles, our clothes strewn about like discarded items from a backpack, under a waterfall that's spurting out of nowhere, under cliffs looming above like the frontier of a forgotten dream. Yana's pale face is flushed, eyes locked. She has her eyebrows raised into right angles. Dion, you scared me, she says. I was sleeping, and then I wake up. You were groaning. At first, I think you were joking, but then you start shaking. I stare above me where the cliff line meets the blue sky, wisps of fog somewhat translucent soaring past, like they're going 1,000,000 miles an hour. I rest my head back on Yana's belly. Wow, you feel hot, she says, putting her hand to my forehead. What was it? Did you have a bad dream? I stall for a moment, thinking of what to say. Should I really tell her my dream? She told me hers. One can only run so long. Yes, it was a bad dream, I begin, taking a deep breath. The sun is staring down, floating 3 inches from the cliff line. So close, it's impossible to believe it's billions of miles away. It's one I have a lot, actually. I trail off, holding my eyes open, staring into the sun. I know it's bad, but I want to burn a little. I can feel Yana's lungs expanding and contracting with each breath. You remember what Mick started talking about earlier? About me and my friend? I don't wait for her to answer. Well, 2 years ago, my best friend Paul, he died, and it was my fault. Yana's heart starts beating faster, making my head bounce slightly. I wait for her to say something, but there's nothing. We paddled out at Jardim de Mar right when the sun came up, singing a song from this band, Galaxy 500. The waves were big. We both almost wiped out on the rocks, trying to get past the shore break. After making it outside, we paddled slowly to the top of the point, 1/2 mile offshore. The colors were surreal, like out of a Monet painting. Not a breath of wind. The water silver and smooth, like silk. I glance back at the waterfall. It keeps coming down in one perfect motion, fluid, serene, endless. I stare at the top. where it spits miraculously out of rock and hangs there for a split second before it falls down and explodes into whitewater. Paul caught the first wave, a monster, paddled straight into it on his huge 9.6-foot gun, the same board he always surfed when it was big. And he just put his head down and went, hooted when he dropped. My eyes scroll away from the waterfall and peruse the articles of clothing lying on the small, smooth stones surrounding us. Her Tom's shoes neatly placed beside each other, one of my Vans slip-ons lying on its side a few feet away. I don't see the other one. We spent the morning catching waves, some of the most beautiful waves I've ever had. The sun came out from behind the mountain, and the water was so clear you could dive under and swim down as deep as your leash, look up, and see the sun shining through. It was like looking through a stained glass window. Then Mick and some other guys paddled out. The vibe got tense, people squabbling over waves. Me and Paul used to have a joke about it. We'd call it DCS, dead cat syndrome. Everybody acting like their cat just died. I paused for a second, remembering Mick sitting outside Joe's bar earlier, his evil smile, his menacing laugh. Sometime late morning, I was in position for a good one. I paddled for it and looked straight down the face of the biggest wave I'd ever seen. Got to my feet and closed my eyes, heart in my mouth. I felt like I was falling from the sky. When I opened my eyes, I was at the bottom of the wave, and the wall stretched forever. After I kicked out, I looked back to the lineup, and Paul was scratching for an absolute bomb. He looked like he was in, and he stood up, but at the last split second, he got hung up at the top, what we like to call stuck in the lip. The wave lifted and threw him. He flew through the air with his board detaching itself from his feet like a cat being tossed from a roof. He came down with the lip. Whitewater exploded 30 feet into the air. Yana's heart is beating faster again. I look back up to the cliff line, blocks of fog spiraling past like ghosts sucked to some black hole in the sky. I knew it was bad. I paddled as fast as I could towards the lineup, waiting for him to surface. The next wave broke outside, rolled in. I didn't see him pop up. I started to panic. I thought maybe he was knocked out. I kept paddling harder. That's when I saw him. Way further down the point than I imagined. He was 10 feet from the big concrete blocks of the seawall, his face barely treading above water. But something was wrong. Something was pulling him down. My voice trails off now because of the pain. It feels like someone is twisting a corkscrew in my soul. His leash, it was caught on a rock, pulling him towards the blocks. I paddled like hell over to him. I was 50 feet away. He looked at me, his face so white in contrast to the blue of the water. One of his arms pulling to stay afloat, the other trying to unstrap the leash. He couldn't take off the leash. I was 30 feet away. I could see his head bobbing up and down along the surface, fighting. And that's when I saw the wave. I was 15 feet away. I could see his blue eyes glinting in the sun, terror written in them like... I stop again, taking a deep breath. He was still struggling to get the leash off. I looked back at the wave. It was huge. I imagined the time it was going to take to get to him, and the amount of time it was going to take before it washed in. I turned around, paddled for the horizon, barely made it over the wave, the concrete blocks staring at me like teeth. I looked back to where Paul was, and he wasn't there. I screamed his name. I paddled furiously looking for him, screaming his name. He didn't answer. My voice trails off into the canyon. The sound of the waterfall trickling down and Yana breathing, the only sounds I can hear. The sun has meandered past the cliff line above us, delivering us into shade. I silently wipe my tears off on Yana's stomach. And Paul, your friend? Yana says softly, finally. Did you find him? No, we never found him, I answer after a while. We found his board in 3 pieces and his leash, but we never found him. I looked for him for days. You must think I'm crazy, Yana. But sometimes I still think I'm going to find him somewhere. I'll be walking down the street one day, or surfing at Punta Pequeña, or getting a poncha at the poncha bar, and he'll show up. And I'll just say, "Hey, Paul." "I don't think you're crazy," Yana says, placing her fingertips to my wet eyes. "And I don't think it was your fault. You should not blame yourself." A white paroxysm of anger suddenly flares up within me. I get to my feet. My knees are weak. I look around the stones, shaking, trying to find my boxers. "Dion," Yana says softly. I look back at her, self-conscious about my eyes that are bloodshot, my face splotched with tears. She's sitting up, her blonde curls cascading down her chest, covering her nipples. "It was not your fault." "How do you know, Yana?" The sound of my high-pitched voice shocking even myself. "You weren't there. How the fuck should you know? How could you know?" I step into my boxers, pull them up, sit down, and start putting on my socks. "Dion, come to me," she says. She puts her arms out. I keep putting on my socks. "Come to me, Dion," she says again. I glance up at her, and her eyes tell me something I've been waiting for my whole life. I lie down beside her. She smiles sadly, inches from my face. Her eyes haven't blinked. I feel her arms envelop me, her nipples sticking into my side like hot coals. "But I was so close," I say, staring up at the waterfall, watching it fall. "I was so close." "Don't think about that now," she whispers in my ear, pulling me tighter. "Just feel me. I'm here. Now." Thanks for listening. Cool, so I have one poem as well I was gonna read before I hand it off. It's called Bells. Half swimming in pink mist, my tongue out, fog lines, wing blast, half tracing sparks in the air, white roses, flat stones, swollen surfaces, half wondering if it's dangerous to eat so many flowers. Half fucking in the same old dirty sweater. Half waiting for rain to fall, exploding cherry blossoms, lime, squeezing every drop, lily tears. Half spitting into the face of a broken mirror, half sinking into the marsh of purple spring, blinking, blinking, blinking. That makes one. The other I'm wishing I never heard the gong inside a mission bell. All right, so I have the grand pleasure of introducing the next reader of the evening, Felicia M. Hayes. We've had quite a few classes together. She's pretty awesome. Felicia M. Hayes earned her BA in creative writing from Texas State University in San Marcos. She is currently a thesis candidate in the MFA in Writing program, working on a memoir about her experiences as a full-time dedicated member of Reverend Sun Myung Moon's Unification Church. She went through the mass marriage ceremony and was matched and blessed to a closeted gay Sri Lankan man. She, too, was closet, but decided to come out when facing the consummation of her marriage, abruptly leaving the church after 13 years of service, from 18 to 32. A second memoir is in the works for covering the adventures of her adjustment back into mainstream society. The series of memoirs are rocks that she is moving to make way for a long list of creative projects. Even though she is a late bloomer, due to her experience, expect to see more of her work over time. Please give it up for Lisa.
Hello there, everybody. First of all, I want to thank the faculty and staff of CCA. Man, you have changed my life. You are right there, right at this intersection, just launching me right now. I'm working, I'm trying hard. So there are some people that have given me, well, actually resuscitated me at times. I have, first of all, the two people, Faith Adeli and Shandy Sakaran, who are on my thesis staff. I'd like to thank them. Actually, it was Faith's class. That was the very first class where I put pen to paper for this memoir. So I'd like to thank my colleagues who sat through all of that and said, you've got to unpack this stuff. I mean, what the hell? And I'm like, I got it on the paper. 20 years to get this thing on paper, okay? So I'm living my dream right now. I definitely want to thank Hugh. When I was living in OK Corral, he kind of dropped me off and flew out of the way because it was like, it was like I'd be at the workshops going, well, if I'm alive next week, then we'll see. So Hugh, thank you so much because you probably saved my life a few times. And Gloria Frem, who's full of resources. Oh my gosh, her poetry class, if you haven't taken it, first years, please do. And Opal, oh my gosh, I shifted with Opal in her class, connecting with the whole Caribbean, what is that, the Caribbean, Flavor. No, it's not even the flavor. We're talking about the cosmology. Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay, anyway, I'll just talk the whole time if I talk. All right, and so who else do we have? Financial aid that allowed me to be here. Yay, Kaiser, too. Yes, Carolyn Goodman, my mentor. And let's see, Dodie, who also has an interesting experience with the cults. And just everybody, because I have to get going on this. I'm trying to make it fast. Sorry. Zoe Tuck, who really helped me with my thesis a lot, too. I want to shout out to him. Okay, let me make sure. All right, so as I said, this has been a while, so I'm just going to start. Here we go. I know I'm forgetting something. That's why I'm trying to. Okay, forget it. Here we go. The name is called, of my thesis is called Paradigm Eclipse in Odyssey. Just have to start on the right note. Uri, that's too low. Uri so는 정길, 금에로 쏘는 정길, 이목 숨바주소 정길, 정길이오라. Why am I nervous? I don't know. Unity saving the people. Unity saving all nations. Come here quickly, unity. Come along, unity. We just finished pledge and morning service. Emotions were high because we were leaving for the airport to Korea after breakfast. Many of the Unification Church members in Southern California were gathered at Pasadena House, Reverend Moon's mansion in Los Angeles, for a special pledge service before we were sent to Korea for the blessing, the mass marriage for which he is known for. We didn't know where in Korea we were going or how long we were going to stay. The living room and dining room double doors were pushed back into the wall connecting the rooms and held all 200 of us, brothers on the right, sisters on the left. We knew that we were going there on our new mission after the blessing ceremony to bring about Nambook Tongil, the unity of North and South Korea. The mainstream culture of the heaven we were building was Korean. I'm so proud of you. You made it. Ganbatte, Lisa-san. Mrs. Yamaguchi beamed at me and gave me a small box with a little card attached. The box was wrapped in lavender origami paper. She sat beside me during morning service, and I noticed that she was crying a lot during our simultaneous prayer. I imagined that she was praying for my safety and that I would get a good match. She had invested in me by showing me how to serve the leaders that visited Pasadena House. Thanks, I was moved by her sincerity. My stomach was full of butterflies in anticipation for the next few hours. I had my own motivation for going to Korea, to practice and develop my language skills, and to explore and get to know more Korean people and culture. I was 28 years old and had served the church as a full-time corps member for 9 years. Many of my peers had already been blessed. They passed me up earlier because the leaders felt I wasn't ready, due to the fact that I kept falling in love with one sister after another. I would suddenly get sent on a new mission every time a leader got wind of a new love connection. No one ever told me the real reason why I was sent away. I also had my own motivation for being blessed. Yes, I wanted to save the world. Yes, I wanted a new sinless lineage by connecting to the Messiah's lineage. But one thing blessed couples enjoyed in the church was status and independence. They were also allowed to go to the seminary and teach. I wanted to teach with the blessing of the church. I was discouraged ever since 1986 when I first brought it up that I wanted to go to the church seminary. Men were encouraged to go, sometimes women, but I've never seen a black woman who attended the seminary. They did, however, encourage me to teach preschool and teach members basic Hangul right before we went. After breakfast, we all piled in the multitude of long white vans parked in every available spot in the front parking lot with all of our luggage filling one van. I had all of my life's possessions in 2 supersized Korean-style expandable suitcases. They were over 70 pounds each. Luckily, they had wheels. We were finally on an Airbus plane to Seoul. I sat next to my doppelganger, Donna. She was from England by way of Guyana. Donna and I looked so much alike that people often mistook us for each other. We also laughed the same, like ducks. We also had the same body shape that included supersized breasts. When we hugged, it was like 2 people hugging with big balloons between them. So we were practicing our Korean on the plane. Stop making me laugh. Donna grabbed my Korean English dictionary and suddenly asked me, how do you say, where's the toilet? Doko, I started. No, that's Japanese. Oh, yeah, 화장실 어디예요? I stuttered. Good, Donna gave me the dictionary back. Okay, how do you say, I understand? I looked directly at her, expecting her to get it. 제가 알겠습니다. She bounced her head as she spoke. She bowed her head as she spoke. We continued for about 20 minutes, and then we fell asleep. There were charter buses waiting for us when we exited Seoul Airport. It was evening as we passed through the streets of Seoul. Neon lights advertising businesses were flashing in blue, red, yellow. The streets were packed with cars and taxis. Most members were still tired and taking advantage of the downtime to sleep. I was so excited to recognize the characters on the signs. Dabang! Mogyoktan! I flipped through my dictionary to see what it was. Coffee shop, bathhouse. From this day, I lived in my Korean dictionary. As we headed out of the city, I could see only my reflection in the window against the darkness outside. I woke up when we arrived at the gate of the McCall factory. It was one of the church businesses that made and sold a sort of barley cola. It was an acquired taste. We got out of the bus and was directed to our rooms. There were large rooms that held about 100 women sleeping in sleeping bags next to each other. The first 2 floors were of men, and the second 2 were for the women. I grabbed my sleeping bag and trotted up the steps so that I could stake out my spot on the floor. Then we went back to get my suitcases later. I went back. My wedding dress was in my suitcase. Marcia made it for me. It was the temporary mission for the elder women to make dresses around the clock in our time for the trip. The building seemed abandoned. There didn't seem to be any staff there, just us, the guests, and with our Korean hosts. I made a mental note to explore in the morning. There weren't too many black women there, and those that were there I had already met in the USA during our traveling campaign. We searched each other out mainly for comfort and a sense of familiarity in the odd circumstance. As more women came into the room, the languages became more diverse: Korean, Japanese, French, German, Russian, Spanish, Italian, Thai, Mandarin. In addition to sign language between cultures, Korean, not English, was the main language to communicate with everyone. I was glad I had my dictionary, but my Korean skills were not up to par yet. There was a lot of guessing and translating going on. If someone happened to have a Korean friend who knew English, they would often ask for translation. We were telling our stories and chatting excitedly, showing our dresses, when a few middle-aged Korean ajimas, which are aunties, brought in beautiful, heavy pastel cashmere blankets. When we finally got the translation, she said, "This is a gift from Father." Each person was given a blanket. As the men helped bring in the truckload of blankets and stack them in the halls, each of us picked one with a pattern or color that we liked. A chorus of "감사합니다," thank you, filled the halls. One of the few phrases many had learned by now. I used my blanket as a sort of mattress against the cold floor, reminding me that I was in a factory, not a hotel. I had issues with taking a bath or shower in public, so late that night, I just waited for all the sisters to go to bed. Everyone was tired. I had strategies to keep the little bit of privacy I valued intact. Another message went through the room: those that are not matched will go back to their countries immediately to continue in their previous missions. One of the spouses of those who received the blessing will stay here for 3 years as their new mission. I went to bed hoping I would get matched and blessed for 2 reasons. 1, I would get to stay in Korea, beginning a new adventure and learn the language. And 2, I will somehow become straight and overcome my sinful desire for women and make my parents happy when I have 2 children. I hoped for a long-haired, feminine-looking Japanese artist. I was a virgin and hoping he had a very small penis. Each of us chose a blanket and found our spot on the floor in the huge room. We arranged our blankets like sardines in a can. We were used to it because this is how we lived in the centers at times, or when we traveled from center to center. I was tired, and so I probably slept soundly. It was just a few seconds where I thought perhaps this is where we're given the poison punch. Just a few seconds. The next morning, we were directed to another building. They had a cafeteria. It was strange because there was no one there except us. We were wandering around in the cafeteria outside the patio, and there were bare trees, and we faced a hillside all covered with snow. And we discovered the McCall soda fountains and a stack of cups. We were told we could drink as much as we wanted. However, not everyone liked the taste, so they stuck with the water. I liked it, so I had some every now and then. At one point, joking with a friend, "Don't drink the Kool-Aid." For a minute, I thought about it, and we were isolated, didn't know what the hell was happening other than what we were told was going to happen, and the staff was not apparent. No normal people were working. Yes, it was odd. On the other hand, we were on a global mission to bring heaven on earth. The Messiah has come, as the Bible predicted, as the thief in the night, and we were lucky enough to be chosen to be pioneers of a sinless lineage for humankind. Finally, a metal folding divider was open, revealing the kitchen. The Korean kitchen staff came out with trays of Korean food: kimchi, rice, soup, raw egg, to crack on top of the rice and mix, thus cooking the egg. They brought out a stack of metal trays, metal flat-tip chopsticks, and long soup spoons. We began to line up. That is when I looked behind me, and Nalene saw me at the same instant. I said enthusiastically, "Hey!" It was nice to see a familiar face, and I asked, "Is David here?" "No." And his response was hesitant. He was usually joking around, but today he was not friendly. I thought he was acting strange, so I didn't say any more to him. I found out later that this was his 3rd time coming to the blessing, and it didn't work out the other times. Well, I also found out later that he was gay. This may explain some things. At noon, we were told we have some time before the matching ceremony, so we all explored the small town, but stayed close, as we can be called at any moment. I'm going to skip forward to the matching. Though Reverend Moon was solemn and serious in Korea, I watched him and Mrs. Moon reverently sit in their respective king and queen chairs on the raised stage. All the insignia and graphics were behind them in a backdrop. The church symbol in gold was in the center, and the Chinese calligraphy on large sheets of special paper were hung above the front of the stage. And on the backdrop, black ink on white. Reverend Moon prayed intensely in Korean. Some of the sisters and brothers were crying. I snuck one eye open to survey around me, then tried to get into the seriousness of the moment. I'd never been one for pump and stance. It was the ideas, the divine principle that impressed me and hooked me, not this kind of ceremonial stuff. Well, except when my heart was broken, those were the times I would pour my heart out into the ceremonies tearfully or write heart-wrenching songs to God. Reverend Moon jumped right into matching people together. It was all so fast. He had very heavy Korean accent, and his voice was tenor, kind of high, like when one inhales a balloon full of helium. He was my height, about 5 feet or so. He would say, "You," pointing. He picked in pairs, you, and moved on to someone else. When the brother and sister stood up in response, they went to the center path, dividing the guys from the gals, and bowed deeply into a full floor bow, just a full floor, it goes all the way down. Reverend Moon, who would already be on to someone else, not physically acknowledging them. Everyone would clap after the bow. This went on until late in the night when the last couple was chosen. Those that were not matched went back home. Some cried. Once he picked a Korean lady and she said, "No, Abaji." Abaji is father in Korean. She went into the corner and cried loudly, shamelessly. I thought, ooh, I didn't know you can say no directly like that with anger. And I thought she was going to get in some sort of trouble. They both argued in that intense Korean style, and other Korean women tried to calm her down. Then she fell into tears in a puddle on the ground while Reverend Moon continued doing what he was doing. Witnessing this gave me insight on a few things about Korean culture and the importance of authentic self-expression that gets respect. It is valued highly. Also, my assumptions about Reverend Moon were being destroyed slowly through experiences like these. After seeing someone say no to the Messiah and not get struck by lightning on the spot, something in me began to shift. He stood in front of me, looking me up and down the way a sister would, with a little smirk, a partial smile on his face, and he said, "You." He walked up the aisle, looking at the brothers, then walked down the aisle and back up. It was about a good 10 minutes or so. Finally, he picked a guy from Argentina, about my height, chubby. Immediately, the guy goes, "No!" I thought, dang, am I that ugly? I felt quite insulted. He took quite a while looking. He even had a trail of farts. His translator was right behind him and was serious, not even an indication of a hint of a smile. As I tried to keep from bursting out laughing, I tried to think of something else. I mused about the different ways cultures react to the fart, and why in my culture it's so damn funny. I successfully ignored the giggles that escaped from some of the Westerners. "You," said Reverend Moon, pointing at Nalene. My jaw nearly dropped. Nalene smiled in that polite way that he does, but his eyes were glaring and a little watery. One thing about this matching business, once the couples are chosen, they have a period of time to accept it or reject it before the blessing ceremony, which in our case was the next day. So when we were picked, then we were allowed to leave until the other ceremony begins. If Nalene rejected it, we would both be sent back to the States. I wanted to stay there and do my mission there. So for that reason alone, I wanted him to accept. And I figured I would deal with the fallout later, 3 years, we got 3 years of separation. He called his leaders. We tried to talk him into it, and his friends all tried to talk him into it. And finally, he reluctantly accepted. Nalene may have accepted, but he wasn't happy about it. He made sure I knew it. I was still struggling with my own self-esteem and internalized every hateful word he had to say to me. We went through the ceremony where we pay the price physically, symbolically, for the sins of humankind. This was in the form of a big paddle, and each person would hit their spouse 3 times as hard as they could on the butt and the back of the legs. No one could really sit down for a few days, and everyone showed their bruises to each other during dinner. The next day, everyone got in their wedding gear. Laugh break. Okay. And went through the blessing ceremony. The ballroom was packed with just the participants and photographers. Compared to other mass weddings, this one was one of the smaller ones, only 1,275 couples. It took place January 12th, 1989. Finished on that part. Okay. Whew. Thank you. Sam Cavedon has 2 introductions, so that kind of makes up for Zane. And so this one's by Alicia Franco. I first met Sam through email in the summer of 2012. We were both desperate for housemates, and we were scrambling to find a place. Although it didn't work out, a few months later, I needed a place to stay in between housing, and Sam kindly welcomed me in. I was more than thankful that I would not be out on the street with my suitcases. I will be forever grateful for her kindness and selflessness, which she continues to show throughout our friendship. I thank her for always encouraging me when times became tough, for pushing me to do the work she knew I was capable of doing, for comforting me in my time of loss and sadness, and when I thought I couldn't last another 3-hour wait between Wednesday classes, she was there to save my insanity with cute puppies and Sailor Moon on Tumblr. Whether she is writing a play, making a film, conjuring up tales of mermaids and sailors, or making her own paper for a book she will bind by hand, Sam puts her heart and soul into everything she does, including being a true friend. That was Alicia Franco. Here's another by Tanika Thacker. Dear Miss Sam, I write this letter to you. No. On the brink of graduating a very strange place. Often at times it feels like I'm on a ship lost at sea. It is an emotional journey, but one that allows me to reflect on my time at CCA. Without a doubt, one of the best things to happen to me in grad school was meeting you. If that wasn't luck enough, I got to be in all the same classes with you our second semester and hate you every Wednesday for always finishing your work before me, no matter how late you began. Darling, you are a natural, a born reader, a badass critique, a generous giggler who makes me feel like I am the funniest person in the room, the warmest friend who always knows what to say, including, "You're off track, man." I can't count the number of times you have given me direction in every sense of the word, nor can I put in words the solace your friendship brought to me my first few months in San Francisco. You, my darling, are my grad school compass. When I graduate this spring, I do so with confidence, knowing that I have you in my corner and a friendship that will inspire, grow, and allow me to discuss Ryan Gosling's posterior at whim. All my love, Tanika. Sam Cavedon.
Hello. Thank you guys so much. That was beautiful. So first of all, I would just like to thank all my friends and colleagues here at CCA. You're all wonderfully inspiring people, and it was an honor to work with everyone. I want to thank my lovely professors, especially Santi Sakreen, my mentors John Lasky and Claire Chafee, and my mentors turned thesis committee Matthew Irabarne and Anita Anita Asmarizani for following this project from its very beginning to its very messy middle. Thank you, Amy Fan and David Marini, for keeping this program running like a well-oiled machine. And finally, thank you to my awesome family who came all the way from the East Coast to see me read. Thank you for all your love and support. And cry break. I would never have the confidence to follow my dreams without it. Okay, so what I'm about to read is from my thesis. It's an excerpt of a letter from a naturalist named Jeffrey Watts to his wife, Natalie. The year is 1884, and we are somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. The fish led us to a mid-ocean sandbar with red coral. The sandbar expanded east to west in the shape of a large diamond, and from the deck of the Georgetown, it was estimated that we would only need half a day or so to walk along the whole perimeter. The coral grew out of the sand in perfectly straight lines, like a farmer's field of cabbage. The water surrounding it was a bright blue, nearly identical to the coloring of the sky, and when I gazed out to the horizon, I could not tell where one started and the other began. The captain idled the ship as we watched the creature float into shallow water. It flailed its pelvic fins against the sand until it dragged its body atop the sandbar. When it finally stilled, beached between two lines of coral, Professor Morton announced he was organizing a survey party to contain the fish and explore the sandbar. Miss Clark, of course, was one of the first volunteers to jump aboard the skiff. The famous illustrator has been an incredible help in drawing and recording the collected specimens. Having only known her by reputation, I am greatly impressed by the talent and precision she brings to her work. There has not been a single instance where I have seen her without a sketchbook in hand. She has easily become the darling of the naturalists, as both Dr. Black and Mrs. Morton dote on her incessantly. Even Professor Morton has warmed to her dedication. "Mr. Watts over here," Miss Clark exclaimed as she patted the spot on the bench across from her. "Can you believe our luck? A new species. It's incredible. I've already made a few primary sketches. Would you like to see?" "Yes, of course," I said, and Miss Clark handed me her sketchbook. Her drawing of the fish was unfinished, of course, but she captured what she could of its body excellently. The exposed, spiny dorsal fin, the ebony scales that shimmered in the sunlight and looked like iridescent gold. Even the regal way it arched its body in long, easy strokes through the water. "It's magnificent," I said. "You captured the creature's spirit." Miss Clark blushed at the compliment. She really is a splendid girl, a spirited woman with an infectious smile. I do hope the two of you can meet someday, Natalie, for I think you would be fast friends. Sitting beside Miss Clark was her brother, Alex, the other assisting naturalist aboard the Georgetown. Though they claim to be twins, the Clark siblings share little similarities in their appearance and character. While Miss Clark is bright and boisterous, Alex is more reserved. Yet despite his shyness, he is the closest person on this ship I have to a colleague. He and I spend a great many evenings in the laboratory dissecting and labeling specimens while Miss Clark draws our results. We arrived at the sandbar and towed the skiffs to the ankle-deep water beside the beached Leviathan. Unlike the coral reef found in tropical climates, this red coral did not grow in clusters or around conveniently placed rocks. Instead, it blossomed into tree-like formations, a single trunk growing out of the sand and expanding into thin branches. There was a lack of an underwater ecosystem as well. Nor fish or mollusk or anemone could be found intermixed among the tiny trees. The water, despite the Caribbean coloring, was uncomfortably cold. With every step I took, a gush would slosh over the tops of my boots, and my feet were numb after a good number of steps. The creature was flopped on its side, its whole body rising and falling with the intake and exhale of breath. Blood from the harpoon wounds formed an expanding red puddle, intermixing with the ocean water, but I marched through the excess unperturbed as I inspected the Leviathan in all its glory. Though the creature appeared to be quite narrow and lithe while swimming, it actually had an enormous girth, the puffing stomach reaching the height of an average man's shoulder. With every other exhale, the fish bellowed a tragic groan, like a low-pitched whale song calling out for something. "Look here," Dr. Black said, poking at the enlarged underbelly of the fish. Unlike the dark-scaled upper body, the underbelly was a murky green soft tissue. "Watts, get me the scalpel, would you?" I reached into my satchel and unbound the cloth holding together the medical examination tools. I handed the doctor his scalpel, and he made a careful incision into the underbelly. The creature let out another anguished moan, wiggling its body and flopping its tail to scare away the thing causing it pain. The doctor, however, continued with his incision, slicing open a 6-inch circle into the underbelly. "Incredible," Dr. Black said. He reached into the hole he cut out and pulled out a green, transparent orb. The orb was as large as a melon and covered in gelatinous slime. Dr. Black turned the orb over in his hands and then held it up to the sun. The rays of light illuminated the sphere, revealing the unmistakable figure of an embryo inside. Natalie, I cannot tell you what it is like for Dr. Black, Miss Clark, and I to huddle around that egg in silent awe. Our moment of splendor was interrupted, however, when the fish bellowed another moan, this one angrier and more desperate than the last. With its remaining strength, it huffed and rolled over onto its stomach. I grabbed the doctor and Miss Clark and pulled them out of the way of the incoming body, the ensuing splash soaking us to the knees. Our access to the egg sac was now gone, trapped between the monstrous scaled torso and the sand. "Davis," Dr. Black began, but the first mate cut him off with an understanding nod. Davis sloshed through the deep water to Leviathan's head. It had large, round eyes that extended from its narrow space, and tiny spikes of sharp teeth that jutted from its lower jaw. Davis aimed the rifle at the approximate dead center of the fish's brain. He fired 2 shots, and with a low, long, moaning sigh, the creature was still. "Poor thing," Miss Clark muttered, gently patting the creature's side. Then she bowed her head in a silent prayer, and I did the same. And then this next part takes place a few letters later in a different part of the ocean. The week sailing through the Pacific was measured by routine. Though now that my mind has benefited from the clarity of hindsight, I'll admit there was an encounter aboard the vessel that is painted with a tinge of oddity. On the night of the 28th of May, I was awakened by a sudden chill like one has when shaken from a nightmare. Startled and unable to sleep, I made my way to the upper deck for fresh air. The nights then were constantly cold and foggy, and one could not navigate the milky darkness without a lantern and good sea legs. It was my intention to simply stand by the entrance to the main deck, praying I would not be in the way of any crew member on the night shift, when I noticed an unmoving shadow hidden in the fog. I called out to what I presumed to be one of the sailors, but the shadow did not respond. I carefully made my way toward him, guiding myself with the ship's guardrail. When I reached the man, I was surprised to find it to be Ferguson. He held on to the railing with ghostly white hands, and he was staring off into the foggy mist with a blank expression. I reached out my hand to shake his arm to get his attention, but his coat was soaked as if he'd been standing in the damp fog for hours. "Good God, man," I said, "you're chilled to the bone. How long have you been out here?" I received no answer. I shook him more forcefully, and then I looked around to see if I could call out for someone's assistance, but the deck was barren with no sign of a night watchman. "Ferguson, can you hear me?" I asked the man gently. He spoke to me without taking his line of sight off the ocean. "She sings to me. She sings to me in a voice filled with sweetness, and it tickles my ears with love." "Who?" I asked. "Is someone out there?" I looked out to the foggy sea, but other than the slapping of dark waves against the side of the ship, I saw nothing. "She sings to me, and I want to do terrible things. I want to tear out my beating heart for her so she can hold my love when she sings." He turned to face me, looking hollow and empty, and Natalie, I was horrified to see 2 lines of dried blood descending from his eyes to his chin. With gentle persuasion, I was able to bring Ferguson away from the edge of the ship. Once his hands were unclasped from the railing, his body deflated against me. He continued to mutter about the she who sang of her dreary existence and his love for her. I carried him off the deck and down the halls to the sailor's cabin. I went back to my own bed, with thoughts swirling about this mysterious she and the strange stigma of blood from Ferguson's eyes. The hypnotic lull of his world prickled at the back of my neck as I lay awake that night. It is often when I cannot sleep or when I finally sit down to pen my letters to you that I truly feel your absence, Natalie. The ocean is a wide, empty place, and though company may distract us from this emptiness, it is when we are alone that the anxieties of separation creep into our thoughts. I can hardly remember falling asleep that night. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all of our excellent readers, if we could give them another round of applause. And please join us at the Writer's Studio to celebrate their work. Thank you.